I talked about tritone substitution and using pentatonic scales to accomplish that, and I skimmed over the probably obvious way to approach that concept, and that's just using triads and seventh chords. So this is a C major triad on the top three strings. If I add a seventh to the top of that, now remember that's based on this C major bar chord shape, so the top three notes of that bar chord are those. If I convert that into a dominant 7, the triad is still the same, but the 7th is only 3 frets higher than the top note of the triad. If I turn that into minor 7, I lower the note on the B string. So this is a minor triad. Add the 7th and it's the same 7th as the dominant 7. If I turn that into minor 7 flat 5, there's the diminished triad. So I'm lowering the G to G flat. The 7th is the same 7th, but it requires a stretch now because I've moved this finger back. So major 7, dominant 7, minor 7, and minor 7 flat 5. Now, if I'm in the key of C major, a chord progression that you're going to encounter a lot is going to be 2, 5, 1. I know I've used that over and over and over, and it's never going to go away. So over the D minor chord, I would play a D minor triad or a D minor 7. Over the G7 chord, I would play the tritone substitute, which is a D flat 7. Now, because of those shapes that we just reviewed, a D flat major triad is right here, and moving that onto the C major target chord is very simple because we slide that major triad shape down a fret. So this to this, G7, to C major, I could use these materials. Here's D minor, D flat, C major. So over D minor, over G7, that's a D flat triad, the substitute for G. And then over C, now if I add the sevenths to those, D minor 7, D flat 7, C major 7. I think a simple way to approach that and maybe turn it into something that sounds a little less like an exercise is to maybe go up one and find a graceful way to come down the next, and then if you come down the second one, then go up the third one. And finding the notes that resolve is also a really good thing to examine. So let's look at that. D flat major 7. All three of these notes want to resolve down by a half step. Now don't forget that this note that's the 7th of our D flat 7 also happens to be the note that's the 3rd of the G7 chord, and that note wants to resolve up to the C, our target note. That note down a fret, down an octave, sorry. Then it wants to resolve up to C. I really like that sound because I've got the root of my D flat 7 chord, the 7 of my D flat 7 chord, and I'm back to the root, so I'm enclosing that root. And so if you use those kinds of things going up one and coming down the next, you'll have this sort of sound.